Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Loose Transistor channel. I'm your host Lucas, and we are back today with part 2 of our build and review series with the Element6Drones Apex. So we're going to be doing the build. Today we're going to be going through the building of the frame and hooking up all the components, making sure that this thing flies. We're going to take it all the way to an indoor hover, and then in the next episode, probably next week, I'll show you guys a tuning guide. And this time, I promise I will bring the tuning guide unless RC5 proves to be another beast that cannot be tamed. I've been reading a little bit about RC4, RC5, and for you guys that were accompanying along and know about the troubles that I had with the last build, which was a Doberman, I'm going to give you guys the final word on that, which was apparently there was some theories being thrown around as to why those issues were happening on RC4. Some of those theories were that maybe the P-gain axis had gotten scaled by accident so that it was a bit too sensitive on the pitch axis, and a few other theories surfaced regarding the slew filter and all this other stuff. However, what it seems to be is the fact that apparently debug gyro notch was set as a setting on RC4. I believe that basically sends the gyro data to the black box so that it can collect it and show you the notch data that it's collecting. But apparently that was getting in the way of the PID loop in some fashion or another, and causing some sort of oscillation. So the devs don't actually have a final answer as to what went wrong, but this seems to be the prevailing theory. Since the latest version of Betaflight, I think RC5 right now, seems to be working fine, at least for me and most people that flashed on it. It seems to be like the issue is resolved. So as long as RC5 continues being bug-free, we'll probably see a release sometime soon. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a full release of 3.2 because some of the features that it has are just simply badass. I basically can't wait to have the camera control setting directly on my quad, and I know that the next version of the CL Racing F4 is going to come with that as well. So without further ado, let's get to building. Oh, one more thing. As always, before doing the build, I did take the time to sand down the edges of the quad all the way around, and I did make sure to add some super glue to the edging of the quad right there, so that it will be protected against delamination on the event of crashes. This trick works really well, and I highly recommend you guys do this for every build. Just put a little bit of super glue there and your arms will survive crashes a lot better. So let's stop talking and let's get down to business and start doing the build of the frame. Alright guys, right before we go ahead and start building this thing, one of the astute viewers out there pointed out the fact that I weighed this guy up with all 5 arms. So I'm going to weigh it again with just the 4 arms, and we'll be able to tell how much this package actually weighs when it's in the air, just the frame. So we're going to put it in grams, put the arms, 21 grams, 22 grams, put the plates, 34 grams, the canopy, or 44, and now the rest of the stuff, so 55 grams, which is not a terrible weight at all. That's a really, really nice lightweight package for us to build on. So let's get talking a little bit more about the frame here. Alright guys, now that we've gone ahead and weighed up the frame and we have all the components here, we can start talking about the frame, talk a little bit about the frame design, and get it all set up and built up. So this frame, I'm not sure if they're going to be coming with the 5 arms, but you do get 4 arms. They're very, very low profile arms, and they only have 3 screws for the motors. I don't really have a problem with that because I have used the Saturn Titan X frames, and they also used a 3-hole system, and it seems to work fine. From what I see here, it looks like it's going to be very strong because there's a lot of carbon on both sides here to hold, oh sorry, so that you can see better there. So there's a lot of carbon on both sides of that hole there to hold this in place and not snap there. So I'm hoping that this is going to do pretty well. Doesn't seem like there is a whole lot of motor protection at all. So if we put the motor right about here, so yeah, you have a little tiny bit of motor protection right there on the end. It's going to keep you from hitting it all the time, but the sides are fairly exposed. So if you get the right hit on it, you're probably going to bend your motor, which is not great, but when you're pursuing weight savings, you kind of have to sacrifice a little bit of protection. It's probably going to be okay for me because I've gained some experience in flying these days, so I don't crash as much, and I tend to crash better than I used to, so things tend to survive. However, in my experience, it doesn't matter how much protection the arms really do have. If you hit the motor's pretty much done. It's really difficult to really protect the motor without building some sort of shell around it. So it is what it is. We need to. This is a lightweight, purebred racer, so it is going to make some sacrifices in terms of durability, just like you would expect from the floss. So you get 4 of these arms. They have 2 mounting holes here on the back. One is basically just a counterpoint to avoid that it moves around, but it also serves as anchoring. And the middle one here is really the one that's going to anchor it down. These are incredibly stiff, and the quality of the carbon fiber is super nice. They came really well machined. There wasn't any little burrs or anything like that. Super well finished, and it looks like really good quality, solid carbon for the arms. Let me just zoom in a little bit more here so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay. So this here is the bottom plate, and you can see it has cutouts for the straps right there and there, and I've already gone ahead and smoothed those out so that they're not going to cut my strap. I'm probably going to end up using one of those drone matter straps that I told you guys about, the Kevlar, because they're just really solid. Has a nice cutout in the middle here, so that just basically saves weight. It is a bit flexible, so that concerns me. So it's a little bit flexible. Concerns me a little tiny bit, but I think it'll be okay because we're going to have the second plate right here, and this is going to provide some rigidity to it as well because it's going to be connected using some standoffs on the sides here and here. So that is your bottom plate, and and it has a little notch right here. It looks like a little bit weird, but that's so you can like strap your antenna and put a zip tie around it and keep it in place, or your battery wires if you want to run them that way as well. It depends on how you end up building the quad. So that's the bottom plate, and then we have the little top plate with a nice big hole right here because all the electronics have to be passed from the bottom of the quad right there. All the cabling has to be passed through to the canopy that's going to be above, sitting sort of in that fashion right there. With the packaging, you also get this nicely designed canopy. It is really just a canopy for the camera. That's the only thing it's really going to hold in there. You might be able to strap some VTX or other thing inside there if it's really small, but the intent is to hold an HS1177 with a 2.1 camera lens. Mine, unfortunately, are 1.8s, and I was having some trouble with fitment because the camera lens is just doesn't stick out as long as the other one here. I'm going to sort of put it in position here. You guys can see. So see how it doesn't stick out? So that's not great because you're going to get a lot of canopy on view. So to avoid that, what I did is I sourced a 2.1 camera lens that I had laying around somewhere in the bottom of my bag. It's one of these guys right here. These are one of the like fake GoPro 2.1s. So it's fine. It's not my favorite to use the 2.1, but it's gonna reduce a lot of headache on my end here, and it will allow me to use the pod. So I'm just gonna very quickly here screw a lens on. Boom, boom. So it would be something like that. Right there. Let's see if you guys can see. So that's going to be much better. It's going to fit the lens really nicely right there. Looks kind of cool to have that big eyeball right there, and I can definitely fly 2.1 no problem. It'll just be a little bit getting used to, and I'll save this one here for something else. Okay guys, so we have the parts somewhat laid out here. Just so you know, what came in the package for me were 10 of these. I think these are 6mm screws. They are a bit bigger, so there's got 10 of those, and I think there's just 2 extra ones because you're going to need 2 per arm to secure everything down. And then it came with 4, I think these are 4mm screws, a little bit smaller, just 2mm smaller than those ones. These here are just to hold the canopy in place, and it only came with 4. It also came with 4 of these blue standoffs right here. These are 10mm, which means that you have to use an AIO board that is short enough to be able to fit within the 10mm stack. I am going to actually use these 10mm ones right here, or I might actually switch them to 15mm ones that I have laying around here somewhere. If I need a little bit extra height, though, I think it should be okay. So 10mm of these ones, just because I really don't like blue, and I definitely do not like having these round style ones. They're a pain to get out sometimes. So yeah, I prefer to have the hexagonal ones because if they get stuck or anything like that, you can still use some sort of tool to remove them. So there we go. We have 4 of those, and I really love the red. So the idea, as far as I understand, is to mount it thusly. Yeah, I'm going to mount mine this way because of that extra little bump that I have right there. It's going to protect me in case of something coming in and crashing and then going down the body. It's going to hopefully protect my motors just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny little bit than having it exposed on this side. This side's going to be the safest side, least likely to get hit. So I'm going to leave the unscrewed part of the motor to the outside where it's most likely not going to get hit. So from what I understand, let's start with one arm here. And so there's 2 sets of holes here. There's an inner hole, so there's 4 here. Let me show you guys. Boom, boom, boom. Can you see properly? Sort of. Okay. So there's these 2 holes right here on each one of these like arm extensions right there. And one of them here is for the standoff. So this inner one is for the standoff is going to go in. This one right here is where the nut's going to go in. It came with 4 nuts right here too for you to secure the arms. And the inner ones right here are for your 30x30 flight controller. So the innermost ones. Okay guys, here we have it. So we've pretty much built the quad. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's just a very, very simple frame. Super, super twisty. So yeah, super, super twisty. So I'm hoping that this bar right here is going to really lock this whole thing and make it a lot more rigid. So we're going to lock that down in a second. Let's first screw down everything, make sure that everything is nice and tight. We have secured everything, we have tightened it down super, super well, and this looks really cool. I mean, I really, really like this. This is the direction of travel of the quad, so you're likely to hit here as you're coming through a gate. You're likely to hit there maybe if you're hitting through a gate. You might hit here, but it's a little bit unlikely unless you're coming like really oddly sideways. You're more likely to hit it right there or right at the very edge. And then you're fairly likely to hit this area right here, but very rarely ever does anything get damaged within this quadrant right here. So I'm gonna leave these arms the way that I have them right here. It might look a little bit weird like that, but once you have the motors in place, it's really not gonna be that noticeable. Yeah, still very twisty, very, very twisty. So we're gonna put this top plate on, see how the quad looks all built up, and then we'll take these parts off and check it out from there. Wow, look at that. That's super low profile. This is super nice. I kind of dig that a lot. Looks like the lens is going to be pretty much about the, just slightly below the prop line. Just going to be right about here on the quad, so right just below the camera lens, which is really nice. Yeah, that did stiffen up the quad a bit. I'd say it's about as flexible now as the Doberman was, and that wasn't a problem to tune at all. There was no problem at all. A little bit of flex for sure. A little bit less flex this way, so yeah, okay, not bad at all. Love the form factor, super small, super light. It feels like this thing is going to be a killer racer quad for sure, and it's going to look super cool as it's traveling too. Like this is a nice line here. It looks like it's going to match up with the direction of travel. Super cool. So yeah, awesome. Really good job, Alex. I'm really enjoying this quad, and it seems like it's super easy to put together. So we're going to take this canopy off, and we're going to get ready to start assembling this thing by mounting the motors on the arms and then setting up the ESCs and all that good stuff. Alright guys, so we have here our trusty soft mount. I'm going to check out and see if the soft mount will work on this build. I'm just going to put 2 of them on, and then we'll take a look and see if the height is going to work out with the top plate and everything. My gut says that yeah, it should work, just barely. Okay, so we've gone ahead and put 2 of these guys right here, one popping on each corner, and I just want to see how much clearance I get from the top plate when I put it on. Yeah, so it's touching the top plate, which is not ideal. So what means that I have to do is just grind off a little bit of material from the top of these silicone standoffs so that I can fit it inside of the quad, but that should be no problem at all. So before I go do that, let's install the motors on the arms here and call that a day, and then we can move on to some other stuff. Alright guys, so we are pretty much ready here to start installing the motors. The way that I'm going to install the motors in this case here is to have the wires actually trail back behind the arm in this fashion right here. So this is the quad, direction of travel is going this way over here. We have the motor, and this is going to be going that way. Why? Because when the props are spinning this way and they come around, they're going to hit the arm first and not the wires, because I'm going to mount the ESCs underneath the arms, and that's going to keep them from getting damaged in crashes and all this other stuff, and make sure that the props don't hit it, because these are very thin arms. There's not going to be any protection for the ESCs at all except for what I can provide by the mounting. So what we're going to do right now is go ahead and screw these all onto the arms and get ready to do the ESCs next. Okay fellas, there we have it. We put the motors on the quad, everything is installed here, and I have them pointing on the right direction that I need for my purposes at least. So quad is going to be traveling basically in this direction. This is going to be the rear of the quad, which is exactly what I wanted, and everything's working out awesome. I only put the 3 screws that we needed to with the Loctite, as you saw here, and I torqued them all to make sure that they're nice and tight. So that lets us move on to the next phase here, which is basically installing the ESCs and then getting ready to mount the flight controller and everything else in there in the middle. So yeah, first of all, I need to go and take these guys here to the bench grinder and reduce the size of them just by a couple millimeters, just to the very top here. So here's the little red bobbin that I've been using for soft mounting. These are great, by the way. Highly recommend these for your flight controllers. So anyway, I need to take a little tiny bit off the top there so that it doesn't touch the top plate, because that way there will be no vibrations being transmitted from the top plate to the flight controller and ruining my tune. So I'm gonna go do that, and you guys will meet me back here when we start installing the ESCs and preparing those to be waterproof and all that good stuff. So check back in a sec. All right guys, so it's been nearly a week since we put the motors in place here on this frame. I just haven't had as much time to be able to get this build done, but we'll get to it as we go. So we put the motors on, everything is good to go. I have gone and I've already sanded my my vibration mounts on the belt grinder, so these have been shortened by about a ½ millimeter so that it won't touch the top plate anymore. And we have some screws here, so what we're gonna do is mount these on, and then we're gonna go ahead and basically leave this aside because we're gonna be preparing all the electronics that are gonna be going on this build right now. So we'll do all the conformal coating, all that stuff, get it all ready to go so that we can just mount, solder everything fairly quickly, and then get this thing hovering. So let's find some screws here that are gonna work with the vibration mounts. Need to find something that will stick through the 2mm, what was it, 2mm, 3mm? Yeah, 3mm plate, and not touch the top of the vibration mount. So this one's a good candidate actually. Okay, so we have the vibration mounts installed here on the frame right now, and they are now lower than the 10mm standoffs that we have right there, so they won't be touching the top anymore, which means that no vibrations will be carried through the top plate, which is excellent. It's just what we want. So we have that good to go. I'm going to test it right now here with the top plate, so we're going to put it in place. Oop, one sec. And I'm just going to check the clearances under here. And I'm not sure if you guys can see it or not, but yep, there you go. So it's clear now. So we should be good to go and fit the flight controller on there. So that pretty much concludes what we're going to do with the frame for now. We're going to leave it aside, and while we do that, we're going to take care of all the electronics here and make sure that everything is ready to go on this build without having to spend too much time on it. So the first thing we have here is a VTX03 that we're going to be preparing as well. So you guys have probably already seen the VTX03. It's the Iakeen Micro VTX. Does 25, 50, and 200 milliwatts. It's a pretty solid little VTX. They work very, very well. They do tend to get a little bit hot, so you definitely don't want to power up and leave this thing sitting around for too long. They will shut down on you, which is kind of nice because they don't necessarily burn, but they will shut down. So if you're in a race or something like that, make sure that you're like the last guy to plug in, because you don't want to leave this thing there cooking all day in the sun. It works really well. Very easy to switch the power modes, the channels, and everything is just by holding the top button right there. So overall, it's a super nice unit. It's small and compact, and the thing that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be replacing this antenna with one of these guys right here, which is what we're going to use. This is the circular polarized antenna from Banggood. These are super cheap. I just put some resin on mine to make sure that the shape stays nice and it'll resist some crashes and all that, and I've been using these and they work really, really well. I like dipoles a lot, but MGP is not allowing us to use it locally, so I've been having problems with people stopping my video too, so we'll just take that out for now, and we'll snap on this guy. There we go. So now we have our UFL VTX03. So while we're at it here, there's a few things that we need. So I'm not going to power the camera through the VTX, so I'm going to cut these two guys right there and leave just the video signal cable on. We'll leave the power cable on. So just like that, we're going to leave the video signal and the power that feeds the the VTX, and that's it. And now we're gonna leave this aside because we're gonna conformal coat this guy in a sec, so we'll leave that there. And we'll get ready to prepare the ESCs in much the same way. We're gonna remove this stuff here and get ready to coat them with some conformal coating. Alright guys, so the process with the ESCs is rather simple. All we're gonna do here is cut open and remove this stuff here because we don't need it, and then we're gonna conformal coat it and get it ready to mount on the arms. So I'm gonna be very careful here. Oop, don't wanna break stuff. Well guys, as I was looking here at the DYS XS-D30 V2s, I noticed that they're all already conformal coated. See that? See how shiny they are? As compared to something like this Yakin right here. It doesn't quite have the same sheen. These have like much shinier. And I can see here that they've been very generous with the amount of conformal coating that they put on. So I might not actually have to worry about putting conformal coating on these ESCs at all. I can probably just wrap them and be good to go. I don't like having these logos on them anyway, so that's fine. We'll remove these away. So I guess all we really need to conformal coat right now is the VTX03. So let me just go get some conformal coating and we'll get it done. Alright guys, so what I have right here is actually dry drones, and I'm going to be using a dry drone here because it's a very small area, and I've used this before on the VTX03 to really get results. So it's very simple. We're just going to grab some here and dab it right across all the stuff. Very generous. There you go. So the VTX03 has been waterproofed and ready to go. So now all we need to do is we're going to remove the ground wire from all these ESCs and put the shrink tubing back on it, and then get ready to slap these on the arms. Alright guys, there we go. We have the ESCs here all capped up, ready to go. The VTX03 has dried out over here, so we're going to leave it aside right now, and then we're going to get ready to mount the stuff on the arms. And we have decided that the direction of travel is going to be this one, because this is where the antenna is going to go, so it's going to be flying this way. So that's just for me to know where we're going to go. So we're going to mount the ESCs on the bottom side of the arm. And the reason being is because these arms are very narrow, meaning that if there's a prop strike going to happen, it is 99.999% going to strike your ESC, not the arm. So to mitigate some damage, potential damage, I'm going to mount it underneath here. And it has some nice helpful holes underneath here that you can run your wiring through if you need to get it in there. But I think we should be able to just run it up like this, and it should be no problem at all. So we'll do that. But yeah, so we're going to mount the arms underneath the quad right now and get them ready here. I'm not sure if you guys noticed or not, but I ended up having to flip the CSC around because it wasn't in the same orientation as the other ones, and that was going to cause me to have one of the motors at a different rotation, which is just annoying. So I just flipped it over really quick and retinned it. So all the ESCs have been tinned, and these are ready to receive the motor wires. So what I'm going to do now is basically take one motor at a time, and I'm going to connect it in such a fashion as that they're all going to be wired pretty much the same way. So rightmost wire over here, I'm not sure if you guys can see. Let's see if I can show you there. Oh, okay, so the rightmost wire that I'm jiggling right now, I'm going to connect to the rightmost pad on the ESC basically. So that way they're all going to rotate the same way, and then I just have to flip through them to get the desired rotation that I need for my quad. So we're going to do that fairly quickly here. I'll show you guys the first motor, and then I'll just zip through and do all the other 4. So basically I'm getting the first one here. I'm sort of measuring it up to about there. I'm leaving it a bit of slack in case that something gets pulled. So we cut that guy there. I'm going to do the same thing with the second one on the second spot here. And then the third one. Okay, so now we have the leads exposed. We just give them a little twist, makes them easier to manage. I'm going to wrap this in electrical tape later to give it a little bit more protection so it doesn't get snagged on stuff, but for now this should do. So we're just going to tin it here really quick before we solder it on using the pincers. So just like that, guys, we got the wires hooked up for this motor. I'm just going to zip through and do all the other 3, and then we'll be ready to set up the flight controller and all that good stuff. Alright guys, so we've gotten all the motors installed and they're all wired up to the ESCs and good to go. I left a little bit of slack here so that if something gets snagged or whatever, should not rip things, but I don't know. Survivability on a hyperlight quad like this is it's a sketchy subject. It's hard to say what's going to work, what's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is very quickly here plug each one of these into my power supply to make sure that they're working and I get the tones that I expect. So I have the power supply here set to 11.4. Excellent. So it looks like our ESCs are perfectly wired and working. There's nothing shorted with the motors. That is fantastic. So we can move on to the next part, which is actually basically putting the flight controller in place and getting ready to start working with it. So what we're going to do next is figure out where we're going to be putting the RX and everything else, because it's usually the RX that I like to solder first on the CL Racing F4. Before we move forward with that though, I forgot to give you guys a bit of an overview of the ESCs that we're using right now. So these are the DYS XSD 30 amp V2 ESCs. So if you're familiar with the DYS family of ESCs, they're super solid, a good price point. They work really well in my experience in both multi-shot and D-shot. The XSD version came out when D-shot became more standard, so these have D-shot built in, ready to go up to D-shot 600. You can also run multi-shot, and in performance-wise, there's really a negligible amount of difference between multi-shot and D-shot. The advantage with D-shot is that you don't really have to do any sort of calibration, and you get to use some of the neat features like turtle mode and beeping your motors and all that other good stuff. So I chose the XSD 30 amps because they've been super solid for me. I've never burnt one. I've never had one fail on me that wasn't a prop strike. So super happy with these. And these are the V2s, which means that they can only take up to 4S, I believe, but that's fine because that's all I'm flying. And they're a little bit lighter and smaller, and they already come conformal coated, which is nice. And I think these have the capacitor removed. Anyway, super solid ESCs, highly recommend them. The DYS XSD 30 amp. Awesome stuff. The 4-in-1 is also good, but I like the individual arms for racers because it's much easier to service. If you break an arm or something like that, you just replace the whole thing and it's good to go. So this is looking pretty nice. Still fairly light, still a bit wobbly as I had predicted. But as we said, when we put the top plate on, it seems like things do stiffen up considerably. So there it is. So that's where it's gonna go, and it's gonna be enough clearance for the flight controller. I'm just gonna pretty much slide in right there, something like that. Boom. It's gonna be kind of tight here with the room, but it should be enough for me to be able to solder the ESCs and everything else. I think there's enough clearance there. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the CL Racing F4, which is what we're going to be wiring up next. So the CL Racing F4, this one is the V1, I believe. There's already a V2 and an underscore S or whatever, but basically the only difference is that they have more ports up here to make it even easier to build everything. So the CL Racing F4 is an F4 flight controller, runs Betaflight very, very, very well. You can run dynamic filters and all the features that you want because this is an F4 board that has plenty of overhead for you to be able to run all that stuff. Black box, OSD, whatever you want, you can probably run on this thing. It is a super nice flight controller in terms of building things. The pads are super nicely laid out, and it comes with a lot of built-in features. So for example, back here we have the built-in SD for you to be able to log your black box directly to an SD card. We have a built-in OSD section right here, so you get a built-in OSD from Betaflight, and you can just like drag and drop your interface, which is awesome. And you don't really have to worry about wiring it. There's a pass-through directly in the top that we'll talk about in a second. We also have a current sensor right there for up to 150 amps, I believe. And this thing here is rated up to 6S as a PDB NFC. So you can just plug in 6S directly to this thing, feed your ESCs from it. It's a fantastic piece of kit. It makes building so much easier. So down here we have the battery minus and battery plus on the two pads that are bottom most over here. So battery minus, battery plus. The top bank right here is all it's all your RX stuff. So their PPM, S-Bus is all around here. I'll give you guys a little quick rundown of what the pads are. So starting back here, we have S-Bus as the first pad. Then we have satellite, 5.5 volt and ground. Then we have telemetry, 3.3 growth and PWM. So you can run pretty much any sort of receiver that you want on this board, no problem. On the flip side of the board, this is where we have your gyro and the STM controller. We also have a built-in buzzer right here, which is rather quiet. It's not great for big outdoors and stuff like that, but I guess it's something. I don't use it at all. Then we have your ESC plus minus and with the motor pad right in between. So right in between each one of these guys you have a motor pad, so it's super easy to map out. And we have up here we have the camera signal so that you can patch in your OSD, camera minus and cameras plus. On the new versions of the CL Racing F4 they have an extra pad here for the camera control, so you're able to change your HS1177 settings through the Betaflight OSD quite easily. Down here we have the VTX power bank. So we have VTX signal so they can have the pass-through for OSD. Then we have VTX plus, VTX minus. I believe these are regulated filters, 7.5, 1.5 amp, 7.5 volt, 1.5 amp BECs. These are 5.5 volts, sorry, 5 volt, 1.5 amp BECs as well. Then we have 5 volt for LED strip, ground, and then the LED signal if you want to run the LED signal. Make sure that if you are running the CL Racing F4 that you update to the latest 3.2 Betaflight because that's where you're going to get all the features that this thing has to offer. In 3.17 a few things don't work very well and the buzzer definitely doesn't work, so I highly recommend you get 3.2, probably RC5 because RC5 has been flying really great on these boards, and then just go nuts, use dynamic filters, use anti-gravity, all that good stuff. It will give you a very nice flight performance. So that's why I've come to come to trust the CL Racing F4 is that I have it on almost all my quads right now. I crashed them a bunch. I've never had one die on me. I've never had a back die on me yet, and they just provide really solid flight performance all around. I barely even used the OSD, black box, and all these other features that are on the board, and to me they very might as well not even be there. But it's just such a solid flight controller in how it flies. And since we're talking about CL Racing, I just wanted to let you guys know that I will have in the channel very shortly a few of their batteries, CL Racing batteries. These are 1600 milliamp hour batteries, and they're lighter than some 1300s that I've seen out there. So we'll talk about that in the vlog soon. As soon as I get those batteries, I'll show you guys. So without further ado, let's start wiring the flight controller by tinning the bottom and top here and getting it ready to receive all the wiring that we're going to hook up. So on the bottom of the board here, we're actually only going to use the S-bus pad, the 5-volt pad, and the ground for my receiver. And then on the top here, we have the battery minus and the battery plus, which we're going to solder to the pigtail that I'm about to prepare right now. So let's prepare the pigtail and the receiver here. So we'll start with the receiver because I already have it here in my hand. So basically that just involves like cutting this covering off and removing these pin headers, because I just absolutely hate working with pin headers. Alright guys, so we have removed the pin header and replaced it with a nice set of silicone wires, which is going to make the installation so much easier. So we have the ground all the way to the left, we have the 5-volt in the middle, and then we have the signal on the left here. We're going to do a quick test. We're just going to trim these all to the same size, and we're going to power it on real quick, and we're going to put it into S-bus mode here. So wrong wires, just need these two. Okay, so I have 2 bits of wire exposed here. We're going to set the power supply to about 5 volts. Okay, here we go. Awesome, so it's all powered up, good to go. It's already in S-bus mode actually. So what we could do if we wanted to really quickly here is just pair it to our radio. That way I don't have to pair it on later on when I have everything built. It's a little bit easier. I like to do that first, so I'm just going to do that really quickly here. Awesome. So we're going to put it into bind mode. So it's blinking now, and I'm going to just power on my radio. I'll give it a second here. Boom, we're paired. So it's saying right there, we're paired. Alright, so I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this receiver or not, but this is the R12 DSM radio link receiver. So this is from Radio Link, of course. It is a 12-channel receiver, does S-bus or PPM, no problem. And it is a micro receiver, so it's super tiny and it has diversity. And so far it's been proven to be an actually pretty damn good receiver. It's actually not as good of a range as the single antenna, full-size receivers that Radio Link makes. But it is good enough for you to race with, no problem. You're not going to run out of range on a race, no way in hell. Now, if you're going to try long range, freestyle or whatever, no, definitely don't do it with this because it's not the best. But for racing, this is pretty much damn perfect. It's super small, it fits everywhere, and it's diversity, so you don't have random cutout signal like you did on the previous versions of the micro receiver. There were only one antenna. So Radio Link is a good budget option. I covered it on my Get Good series when I talked about radios, goggles, and all that stuff, which reminds me that I have to get back to that series sometime soon, and I promise I will. But for now, make sure you go back and check that out if you're curious about radios and stuff like that. There's more information about the Radio Link and what it's all about. I've been a proponent of it for a long time because this is, I don't know, for the price, it's just good quality, man. That's all I have to say. Anyway, so we have our receiver here ready. The next thing we've got to do here is waterproof it with some dry drone, make sure that it's good to go. We're going to put some silicone on it so that it's nice, and then we're going to figure out where the hell we're going to mount this and how we're going to wire it up. So let's get going with that, and then we're going to figure out our pigtail as well. Okay, so I figured out how the strap is going to mount on. The strap holes here aren't terribly wide, so I wasn't able to use the Drone Matter strap. I'm going to talk to Alex and ask him if we can't make it a little tiny bit wider, because I think that would be perfect. You could use it would be easier to put the straps on and swap them around, and it would also allow me to use the Drone Matter straps, which are these Kevlar ones that I've been slowly switching my fleet over to, because these are literally indestructible. So as I'm breaking straps, I'm replacing them with these and then never worrying about it again, which is awesome. But yeah, they didn't fit here, so that's okay. We're gonna use just a regular strap that I have here, and that'll be no problem at all. So we have the strap there, and that leads me to believe that I can actually use, ooh, that's almost too good there. Yeah, like I can actually mount it maybe somewhere like that. I'm not sure. This hole here is actually too big for my receiver to comfortably fit in. Okay guys, so after fiddling around here for a while, I decided that I'm going to mount the receiver down here and have two sticks sticking out basically like that, or zip ties sticking out like that, so that I can use them as antennas, and that should keep it out of the path of the props, I'm hoping. So something like that, and that like going around the sides of the quad, but it'll mount here in the middle. So I'm gonna have to put something here to kind of just keep it in place here so that it doesn't fall and move around. So I'll put some double-sided tape there, and we'll mount this on top. So while that sits there, while we figure that out, I am gonna make the XT60 plug that is gonna go on this guy right now. Alright guys, if you're wondering what this is all about, this is just like a dongle that I use for other stuff, but anyway, I like to plug in a male end into the female end of the XT60 so that when I solder it, nothing comes out of place, everything stays nice, and it doesn't deform what's inside there. So now I can just pull it out and boom, everything is still straight and good to go, and I have my XT60 ready to solder onto the flight controller once we figure out exactly how long we need it to be. Awesome, so we got our XT60 soldered on here, it's perfect, and now the next thing that we need to do here is just basically I shove the thing from the bottom here, and I bend it so that it kind of follows the contour of the sky, so it gives it lots of freedom here, and then I bend the arms over the stuff that I'm going to solder, like here and here, and then I just come along and I throw some solder on it. Okay guys, so there we have it. Whoa, let's go. Come on. Alright, so here we have it. We have the flight controller with the power lead solder. I still have to cut those two little leads that are left over, but we have the power connected there perfectly. We have the ground connected, and then we have our capacitor all matchy, nice, ready to go. So when this mounts here in the back, it's just going to stick out just a little bit, and it'll be really far from the prop, so no worries at all. We'll put a little bit of tape on it to hold it against the XC60 here so that it doesn't vibrate as much, but this is pretty much it. So the next thing we need to do is just do a quick battery connect here after I trim the leads to make sure that I'm not touching anything bad, and we'll see how it goes. There we go. So it's pretty much good to go. Alright guys, so I took this to my bench or my computer over there to do another test, and I flashed through 3.2 RC6, which is awesome. It's the latest 3.2. I've already done most of the configuration on it already because I've built so many of these. I know exactly what I'm going to be using in terms of components, so I've already done all the setup. If you're curious about how I do the setup, I have two videos on it. I have one that's from the Strictly Racing Drones 5-inch, and I can link that to you guys if you ask me about it. And there is another one which I did very recently on the vlog section. It's just about 3.2 and RC5, and I walked exactly through what there is settings wise and usually what I use. So we're gonna follow along here. This guy here is pretty much good to go. We're gonna put a strip of that 3M goodness right here at the bottom to kind of cover that hole, so that I can put my receiver on there and hold it in place so that it doesn't flop around all crazy. Alright, so we have that plugged in. We're going to plug in a battery here real quick and make sure that we power on the RX. Good to go. RX is powered up, and it looks like it's hooked up perfectly. Alright guys, we got the flight controller secured and everything is screwed down. We have the going out of the back. I actually ended up having to switch this around so that it will go out of the back. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to mount these to the arms. I'm probably just going to have two little things that stick out over here. We'll see how that's going to all shake out, but I'm not too worried about it. It should be fine. Let's see what else. So now we're getting near the next parts we need to do, which is basically secure the USB secure the USB port here with some resin to just make sure that it doesn't go anywhere, and then we're going to tin all the pads and get ready to hook up the ESCs. So let's do that real quick here. So what we're using here is that Bondic stuff. It's just like a UV cured resin. Comes in a nice little container like this. So basically all I'm going to do here is apply a generous amount of it over top and over the sides here. So just like that, covering the back. And that I find is usually enough. You don't want to get it inside the contacts or anything like that because you don't want to block your USB from being able to get in there. Excellent. So we got our pads tinned and ready to start hooking up the motors. So we're going to start with the rear motor, motor 1. We're going to hook this guy up first, and then we'll move on and do the other ones. Sweet guys, there we have it. We have wired up the Alright guys, there we have it. We wired up the ESCs, they're all powered up to the flight controller now. So what I'm going to do is quickly plug it into that battery that I was testing with and see what happens. Actually, I'm going to go with a 3S for less potential damage. So here we go. Excellent. So all the motors started up. I haven't connected the signal leads yet, so we're going to do that next. But they all started up, so that means that my wiring so far is good to go, and I don't have to worry about it. So now we got to worry about signal wires. So I'm just going to do them one by one over here, and you guys will follow along, and it'll be quick like that. Alright guys, so we have wired up all the ESC signal pads. As you can see right there, the white wires are all the signal pads and they correspond perfectly to the motor. So if we look at it this way, this is the direction of travel of the quad, this is the rear of the quad. We have motor 1, 2, 3, and 4, and these have all been wired up to the respective pins on the CL Racing F4. So now we're going to connect the 3S battery to this whole shindig and make sure that we get the proper tones and no fire. Excellent. So we got initialization, everything worked out perfectly. So we know that the wiring here is good to go. So now comes the fun part. We have to figure out all of the video system and start getting that hooked up so that we can feed it through the top plate right here, which is going to be fairly easy because most of these things are going to fit right through it. Like you can just like Awesome, so there you have it guys. So this stuff here is all hooked up and it's ready to go for the video. I just gotta go and make sure that this thing here is calibrated properly in terms of focus. So when we get back, we're gonna close this thing all up and hover it. Awesome? All right, check back in a sec. All right guys, so a couple things that I did here, other than I did get the camera lens set up properly so that it is focused on my camera now, which is awesome, and I fitted it to the pod. So it fits nicely in there and actually does give the pod a little bit more rigidity. But that means that in a hit, I'm not sure how that would be, how survivable that will be. We'll have to see if it hits a gate or anything like that, how well this pod's gonna do and how well the camera will survive any crashes. But it's really nice and lightweight and it's a nice streamlined package, which I do like. So we're almost getting ready here to lock everything up and start strapping everything down. The other thing that I did was to go into BioHeli and reverse motor, let's see, motor 2 and 3, because they were spinning the wrong way, and I run props in because that's just how I do it. And here we go. So let's get ready to mount everything here, close it up, and then we can hover it. Uh-oh. Alright guys, there you have it. We have closed up the canopy. I'm not too jazzed about what's going on here in terms of the VTX placement. It's not really great, as you can see right there. It seems very exposed and there's not a lot for it to grip on. So I'm gonna have to put at least a zip tie around here to hold this together so that it doesn't move in the event of a crash. That's gonna hold that antenna in place on top of the on top of this here nice capacitor, which is not ideal, but it should hold in the case of a crash. But literally it's kind of hanging there by like a thread, not very much. So I kind of wish I had one more cross beam in there, so for me to really be able to secure the VTX03. I don't really see anywhere else where I can put this safely. I try to put it behind the camera, but there's not enough clearance between the camera and the top of the bottom plate down there. I'm not sure if you can see it. There's like almost no clearance at all. So you can't really fit it in there either. So pretty limited on that. I think this was probably designed for a different type of VTX, maybe a bigger VTX, one of those like FX style. But look at this thing. It looks freaking mean, man. It looks super cool, super fast. And it's light. We're gonna weigh it up pretty soon. We're almost at that point of weigh up. I just need to secure a few things here, and then we'll be able to hover this thing indoors and make sure that it works. But before we do that, let's do a quick test. Let's plug it in here, make sure that nothing explodes, and then we'll test the video and the radio. By the way, I don't know why it's doing that. That double startup tone, I don't know what that is. I think it might even be something to do with the new Betaflight RC6, which is what this is flashed with, RC6. So let's hope that it doesn't actually give me as much trouble as RC4 did. I'm hoping that this one is going to be good to go. So let's see here. Let's grab the radio. Actually, just got back from flying at the factory. I'm not sure if you guys saw the video or not, but we were testing it out to see if the video quality was good enough for us to do a race in there, which would be pretty cool. Okay, I have a set of goggles here. So I just have a set of goggles here. I'm just gonna plug it in. I'm not even gonna put the antennas on. It doesn't matter. Cool. Yep, we got video, no problemo. Not sure if you guys can see in there or not, but it's there, so we're good. I just don't want the VTX to overheat, so that's why I took that off. Let's put my glasses back on. Okay, so now we just have to test and make sure that it arms and responds to the commands as I expect them to. I've already done the setup on the FC when I had it off the craft because it was a little bit easier. I was already sitting there, so I figured I'm gonna flash it, do the whole thing all at once. And all right, so here we have the radio. Let's turn it on. Turn on the throttle. Okay, contact. All right, here we go. All right, everything appears to be working as expected, which is good. Okay, cool. See here, the screws are still gonna screw up my battery, so I'm gonna put a little bit of hot glue on this thing here, and we're gonna put these guys here on zip ties because everything is working good as it should, and we'll weigh it up and do the maiden in here so that we can make sure it works. So just give me a second here. We're gonna do that all very quick. Alright guys, so we got everything secured here. So I have a zip tie around the antenna here holding it to this guy right here, so it's going to keep it from just flying around. And we put our antennas kind of facing this way, so they're both pointing down. Should be no problem, especially for racing, which is a fairly close range, so I'm not really expecting to lose too much range, but we'll test it out. And it's all coming out of the sides like that, so it'll be well protected from the props. So overall, this has come out to be a very, very sleek package. Everything is very well contained. I wish this was a little bit better secured, but it is what it is. We'll have to see what happens when we crash. So I'll definitely be telling Alex about that and asking him about maybe getting a different style of top plate. That would be cool. But right now, we're just going to check the clearances with this prop to make sure that I'm not going to hit anything. Yeah, we're good there. Cool, excellent. Same here. Perfect. We're good. So we have all our clearances and everything. So what I'm going to do now is put a little bit of hot glue in the bottom here to create the battery pad. We'll put some props on and we'll hover this guy. And actually we'll weigh it with the props and everything. 50 grams. Cool. So let's just weigh the quad first. And just making sure that it's touching only the scale. 280 grams. I don't know if you can see that or not, but 280 grams. That's crazy. That is definitely the lightest quad I've ever built. Let's see, where's the Doberman? Let's check out the Doberman. 283. Okay. Fair enough. Very close. So definitely going to be competing with the Doberman very closely. Little slightly bit lighter. So let's see what it will weigh with the battery that are generally run. So I usually like to run these guys for races. Bonka 1500 graphene. These things are amazing and they've never let me down. So one of these guys here brings me up to 468, 467 is just hovering about that. So that's really not bad. It's going to be a very light quad. However, check this out. That was 468, right? 468. Right here. 466. So actually only 2 grams lighter. I actually expected this to be a lot lighter. Interesting. So anyway, this battery right here is the CL Racing battery. It's priced pretty close to the CNHL batteries, and I'm going to be testing them out, so you guys can look forward to seeing a review of the CL Racing battery. I've heard good things. I've tested it out, and I was pretty impressed with it the first time. So yeah, well, guys, I'll give you a report on how these do over the next couple weeks. So let's hover this thing indoors. All right, guys. So here we have the quad all built out. Check it out. It's pretty sweet. So let's plug it in. Let's see how it hovers, and hopefully it doesn't go all crazy on me. So here we go. Alright guys, so that's how we did it. We built the Element6Drones Apex. It's all done now. It weighs about 480 grams with the battery, which is really not bad, so I'm pretty impressed. It's going to be a lot of fun to fly this thing around. Everything seems to be working fine. It hovered pretty good. There was no oscillations, nothing weird, so I'm really looking forward to getting this thing tuned. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, because the next episode in the series is going to cover tuning this guy and how it performs and all that good stuff. I promise this time I'll do a proper tune video. I didn't do one for Doberman because that thing just drove me nuts, and it was not the Doberman's fault or anything like that. It was just Betaflight being weird. So anyway, we got through this one. This one is working, so you can look forward to a tuning video in the next week or so. And there's more cool stuff coming on the channel as well. We will be talking about the Hive 6-inch build that I have coming down. We still have to build this cool crazy cross thing right here. So yeah, we're still gonna do this guy, I promise, at some point. Just waiting for some stuff. And we'll probably be doing a review of the Clearview. I have a Clearview on the way, and I've always wanted to try one out. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah guys, so as always, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.